Chapter 2. You're fine now, right? Daring Do met her attacker with practiced hooves, surprised at how much concentration she had to put forth to counter Ditsy's quick jabs.
Gosh, sis, you've been practicing,
she acknowledged between parries, ducking away from a swift swipe at her ear.
I was always a better fighter,
Ditsy grunted between kicks, finally catching her sister in the hind leg just above the mustard mare's hoof. She squeaked at the pain and doubled her efforts, landing a series of painful punches on top of Ditsy's head. Her golden eyes swiveled in their sockets. Daring barked a cruel laugh.
Not always, little sister.
She bumped a hoof against the space between her wonky eyes. Muffin-scented steam blew from Ditsy's reddening ears before she returned to her fierce attack.
You ruined my life!
She screamed, pummeling Daring with 2 hard slaps across the face.
You ruined mine first!
Daring yelled back, sliding out of the way of a powerful buck and knocking aside a stray hoof with her wing. Ditsy's wrath quelled a bit.
What did you say?
Daring took several deep breaths.
I said that...
She twisted in place, cracking her spine as she gasped for air.
Whew. Oh, Luna's nipple, I'm out of shape.
Ditsy tapped her hoof against the ground as Daring recovered. She took advantage of the moment by inspecting herself for any noticeable wounds. A large, dark spot was appearing on her ribcage, and the top of her head was pounding obnoxiously. But at least she hadn't drawn blood. Daring's lip was cut enough for a few red drops to pool, but both of them had seen much worse.
Whew, gosh.
Daring shook stars from her vision.
Oh, wow. Guess sitting around all day writing stories takes a toll on a body, huh?
She glanced at Ditsy and frowned.
How come you're not tired?
I'm the local mailmare. I fly all across this town every day, not to mention my part-time job at Hoover's Movers.
She rubbed the back of her neck.
I, don't get many hours there anymore.
Daring didn't notice her sheepishness, finally getting a hold of herself with a final, collective breath through her nostrils.
Whew. Okay. Back to fighting?
No. You said that I ruined your life before you ruined mine. What in Equestria is that supposed to mean?
A heavy silence fell over the sisters as they both stared bewilderedly into the other's eyes. Or, I, at least.
You don't remember?
Remember what?
The yellow Pegasus offset her jaw. With a determined gait, she stomped to the front door where she had dropped her luggage several minutes earlier. She reached into a side pocket of the largest suitcase with her mouth and removed a familiar tome. Then she fluttered back to Ditsy and spat the book on the ground before her.
Can you guess what this one's about?
She hammered the cover of Poison Whispered Kiss. Ditsy tried to act innocent, but her furrowing brow betrayed her.
How did you write it with only one mare?
I added a character. A native, like him. Some pony he knew his whole life. It made it easier to write, I guess. Adding a backstory like that.
Noticing the tears in Daring's eyes, Ditsy let out a despondent sigh.
I'm sorry about that, okay? I know you loved him. And honestly, you would have been better for him. And Luna knows he shouldn't have led you on like that. But for whatever reason, he fell for me.
Daring winced.
And there's nothing we can do to change that.
I know, Ditsy. Believe me, I know. Besides,
She stole a brief glance at her sister's misaligned eyes.
I did much worse to you than you did to me.
She was surprised when Ditsy shrugged.
It really was an accident.
I'll never get that out of my head.
Cold chills ran down Daring's neck.
One good smack between the eyes and you were out, falling helplessly to the rocks below.
No need to bring your prose into this.
Why were we fighting so high up anyway? If we were closer to the ground, that fall wouldn't have been half so nasty.
Ditsy lifted her shoulders again.
We were young, energetic Pegasi. Our tempers went up, we went up.
I'm just glad you survived.
Gee, thanks.
No, really. I was so scared, Dits. I don't know if I ever told you this before, but when I flew down there and I saw you'd hit your head...
She shuddered.
Ugh. It was gross, Dits. Seriously, your skull was cracked clean open. Thought your brains were gonna leak out. I was sure you were dead.
Thanks, Daring. I'm really glad you dropped by to tell me this.
Oh, quit it. You're fine now, right? Well, more or less.
She giggled as Ditsy's eyes swiveled.
Good thing he was so powerful. And that he loved you so much. I don't even know if Celestia herself could have healed that wound as well as he did.
Ditsy lifted a hoof to the back of her skull. There wasn't even a scar.
Love is a powerful magic.
Daring hummed in sad agreement. She sighed and lifted her weight.
Well, I guess that's it then.
She clicked her tongue and bent down to grab the book. One of Ditsy's front hooves came down on its cover.
I think that, I'll keep this one, actually. Payback for the damage to my house.
She slid the novel beneath her. Daring's eyes swept over the messy, hoof-pocked kitchen and front room. A smile twitched at one corner of her mouth.
I guess that's a fair trade.
After a brief silence, Daring Do turned around and walked toward her luggage and the door. Just as she reached it, some pony pushed it open from the outside. The wood smacked Daring across the face, sending her sprawling into her pile of suitcases.
I'm home, Mommy!
Dinky Doo exclaimed as she burst through the open doorway. In the distance, 3 blank-flanked fillies waved goodbye and zoomed away on a scooter.
Daring?
Ditsy yelped, hurrying to her fallen sister's side.
Daring?
Asked Dinky, following her mother to the yellow mare.
Daring do?
The famous pony scampered to her hooves as if recharged by the sound of her own name. She flashed the youngster a winning smile and tousled her spiky gray mane.
The one and only.
Mommy, look! Daring do is in our house! Actually, she was just leaving.
Ditsy replied, giving her sister a meaningful look.
I think she has another big adventure to brave.
Hesitantly, Daring gathered her things with her tail and her wings and trotted around the still open door.
Sorry, kid, but your mom's right. I'd love to stay and chat, but I gotta go find stuff.
Her grin was weak, but Dinky was too starstruck to care.
All right then, Miss Dew. You better hurry fast. Nice to meet you.
She beamed at her aunt. Daring laughed softly at her innocence.
I got you, kid.
Ditsy wrapped a foreleg over her daughter's shoulders.
Why don't you go up to your room and start getting ready for bed? I'll be up in a minute to get a bath started. Okay, Mommy. Bye-bye, Miss Daring Do.
She added before bounding up the stairs.
Bye.
Daring echoed, waving with a pained expression. She turned to Ditsy when the foal was out of sight.
What's her name?
Dinky Doo. With 2 O's.
Daring laughed.
Yeah, well, we can't all be action heroes, I suppose.
She winked. Ditsy didn't even smile. After another click of her tongue, Daring started out the door.
This is not how I expected this visit to go at all,
She said over her shoulder.
but I'm still glad I got to see you. Even if we did get into a little squabble.
We've had much worse.
That we have.
Daring nodded. She stopped in her tracks 3 or 4 pony lengths from Ditsy's front door, twisting her head far enough to look her sister in the eye.
She's not adopted, is she?
Ditsy's stomach lurched.
Excuse me?
Dinky. She's not adopted. She's his, isn't she?
Ditsy said nothing. Daring nodded.
Yep, I thought so. She's the same color as his eyes. The timing works out just right. I had no idea you even got that far with him. I probably would have put that in the book. Readers love that kind of stuff.
Daring.
Of course, then I'd probably have to start calling it a teen series rather than being for everyone. My publishers are really cracking down on accurate ratings.
Daring.
Heck, maybe you forgot about it. Maybe you've told that adoption lie so many times to the folks in Ponyville you started to believe it yourself.
Leave, Daring.
Yeah, Ditz. Just one more thing before I go. I wanted to tell you that...
The Dew's door slammed shut. Daring sighed again.
I'm sorry.
As the sun dipped closer to the horizon, Daring Do bowed her head to her knees and started toward the center of town. No use coming up with Plan B on an empty stomach. With the scent of Ditsy's muffins lingering in her nose, Daring decided to look for a confectionery. Perhaps all she needed to forget about her sister's bitterness was a nice, quiet meal in a humble bakery, the likes of which she was sure to find in a place as boring as Ponyville. As Daring Do pushed herself toward the palace's highest tower, she wondered if the Sultan had yet succumbed to Celestia's night. If, for some reason, he was still awake, her job was about to get much more complicated. With a quiet backstroke of her wings, Daring reached the uppermost balcony. Her lightly padded hooves made no noise against the structure's cold granite, but she remained still for several seconds, wary of the unicorn guards posted at the balcony below her. They had not noticed her ascent, neither were they alerted by her landing. With a victorious grin, she crept into the Sultan's chambers and narrowed her eyes in the darkness. Just as she suspected, the royal tower was divided into 3 chambers. The largest hosted a wide variety of native sculptures, rugs, draperies, and other Hispanic furnishings. The remaining rooms were the Sultan's private quarters, in which he presumably slept, and a mysterious third. Daring hoped to find the enchanted carpet therein. Like an agile serpent, she wove past looming idols and meticulously decorated vases. Every item in the largest chamber was worth a fortune, but Daring was focused on obtaining the palace's rarest artifact. The giant archway leading to the mysterious third chamber was filled with a fine, velvety curtain of the deepest red. Daring was reminded of blood as she pulled back the barrier with her teeth. If this room truly held the fabled flying carpet, enchanted with alicorn magic, booby traps were sure to spring upon her at any moment. She moved into the pitch-black chamber, letting the curtain sway shut behind her, posed to dodge from any sign of danger. Daring tried to regulate her breath as her heart hammered against her ribs. Oh, how she wished she was a unicorn in these moments. A simple spell would have illuminated the lightless room. How was she to find the carpet and avoid the traps if she couldn't see her own hoof in front of her face? She snorted out of habit and flinched at her own mistake. The Sultan might have heard that. Perhaps he was stirring in his neighboring bedchambers. Perhaps he was already trotting toward the red curtains. Or perhaps... Daring felt the unmistakable tingle of warm breath behind her ear. Rainbow Dash gasped, leaping away from her book with enough force to knock her own front door open. She grumbled at herself and got back onto her hooves with a few expert flicks of her wings. With remarkable speed, Rainbow careened back into her house, slammed the door shut behind her with her tail, and scooped up the book from its spot on the floor in one fluid motion. A multicolored streak painted the air between her doormat and her bed, where she reopened the book on her pillow and continued reading. She spun around and lashed out with a hoof to catch her company in the neck, but a thick foreleg was already lifted to block it. With a single snap of her wings, Daring pulled herself away from the unseen stranger. Squinting through the dark, she dove at his vague outline to land a good punch on his jaw. With a brilliant flash of light, the stallion disappeared. Daring gulped before slamming into the floor, sliding at least 4 feet on her chin. A strange place to find a thief. A rich, resonant voice pierced the darkness, smoother than the curtains behind her. I would think the golden statues or gem-embedded amulets would prove more interesting to your greed than these.
I'm not spurred by greed.
Daring crouched defensively. Then why invade my palace, little thief?
I'm not a thief.
She lunged toward the voice. Her target teleported again, but Daring was ready this time, using her wings to stay airborne. Ah, you learn quickly, the Sultan's voice complimented from another corner of the chamber. I would like to learn something on this night as well. Why did you invade my palace? Daring gritted her teeth. She whipped her head to and fro, searching for the exit, but the velvet curtains allowed passage to no traces of light. She was completely disoriented, a feeling that put her on edge more than she cared to admit.
Turn on a light, and I'll tell you.
There was a brief pause filled only by the steady flaps of Daring's wings. Very well, agreed the Sultan. A spark of magic whisked through the air, colliding with a chandelier hung high above their heads and igniting a great many candles at once. The room was filled with warmth and light, but Daring's hope dropped to cold, dark depths. The chamber was devoid of carpets, let alone enchanted ones. Instead, scores of musical instruments lined the walls like art pieces, gleaming with careful polish. The floor, too, boasted impressive piles of various music makers, from tiny bongos to grand pianos. The Sultan himself stood far from Daring, leaning against a colorful marimba as he eyed her with genuine interest. You seem disappointed, he remarked. Daring hung her head with a tired sigh.
I didn't expect this.
Getting caught? Daring shot him an impatient glance.
The instruments.
She gestured with a hoof.
I thought this room had carpets.
Why was she telling him this? Perhaps the magic carpet was in his bedroom, or hidden among the statues of the central chamber. Daring was one of the fastest ponies alive. She could outrun him, with or without his impressive teleportation spell. Yet her hopes were dashed when the Sultan began to laugh. It was not a cruel or sympathetic laugh. Instead, it seemed relieved. There is no magic carpet, Daring do, he said with a smile. It is only an old fable. Daring blinked and backed away.
How did you know my...
We met earlier today. I am not surprised that you do not remember. We were both in disguise. Widening in realization, Daring's eyes scanned over the Sultan's handsome, dark blue coat, his long, ice blue and silver mane, his striking, periwinkle eyes.
You're the stallion from the market. The one who told me about the carpet.
The Sultan laughed again. Indeed, Miss Dew, it was I. To finally be honest with you, I have known of your presence in my country since the moment you arrived. Daring felt weak and vulnerable for the first time in several years.
But how?
I orchestrated all of it, Miss Dew. I was behind every catalyst that led you to this exact moment. I knew you would not respond to a direct invitation to my palace, so I devised another way to meet you. He bowed deeply, and I must say it was worth every hour. I am honored, Miss Dew. Daring blushed and readjusted her trademark headgear.
So, there's no carpet.
No.
And you're not going to arrest me.
Correct.
And you were behind all this just so you could meet me.
Privately. Daring did a double take.
What? No, shut up. You.
The Sultan smiled suavely. Miss Dew, you must understand. You wisely keep a low profile among your own kind, but every pony knows and fears the name of Daring Dew among the underworld, and every pony knows and lauds your name among the overworld.
The overworld?
Nobility. Your princesses, for example. The King of Caballo, the Queen of Cheval, the Dragon Empress. Me. We have all been made aware of your existence and accomplishments, despite your valid efforts to keep secret your identity. Daring cursed under her breath.
Why? My princess raises the sun and the moon. Why would she care about me?
The Sultan looked surprised. Your princess cares for all her subjects. Even so, you are a mare among mares, Miss Dew. Surely you know that.
Every pony's special. So I happen to like exploring. So what?
You have saved the world from wicked threats 12 times over.
So is she. So have 100 other ponies through history.
Ah, the Sultan sighed, taking several deliberate steps closer to Daring. The heroes of the past. What are they if not tools to shape the heroes of the present? He leaned forward, ruffling his great azure wings. And you, Miss Dew, are the greatest of all. Wings. For the first time, Daring noticed the regal appendages sprouting from his back. Her eyes darted from his wings to his long, spiraled horn.
You're an alicorn.
The Sultan chuckled. Of course. Surely you did not expect a unicorn to rule a country. Daring shuffled her front hooves sheepishly.
I didn't notice.
Does it trouble you? Her eyes locked with his mildly violet pair.
It doesn't. I'm not easily troubled.
The Sultan grinned. And that is one of the many things I like about you, Miss Dew. They stood in silence for a long moment. The Sultan seemed unaffected, but Daring searched for a suitable topic to break it.
What is this room? If it's not carpets.
The Sultan seemed pleased by the question. It is my personal collection, he answered, taking time to cast his eyes over each instrument. I have a deep passion for music, you see, and through my years I have taken it upon myself to learn to play as many as I can. Daring lifted an eyebrow.
You actually play them?
Of course. One corner of his mouth lifted. Would you like to hear? She gave a startled cough.
No offense, Mr. Sultan, but this is all a little too weird for me. I came to collect a magic carpet, not get serenaded by a royal admirer.
Please, Daring. He took up a sitar in his magical silvery aura. Do not call me Sultan. I am Alquavsa Alula, and you may call me Alula. Rainbow snickered.
Alula?
She burst into mocking laughter.
What kind of a name is Alula?
Her cackles were met with another sound, originating from her stomach. She winced at its grumbles, glancing at the clock on the wall.
Oh gosh.
She ran a hoof through her mane.
Have I really been reading all day?
With a reluctant glance at the half-finished novel, Rainbow used one of her feathers as a bookmark and hurried out her front door. Sugar Cube Corner sounded like just the place to wolf down a casual evening meal And then she could learn what Prince Alula had in store for her hero. She could hardly wait to get back to Daring Do.